The frost had already claimed her fingers by the time she realized she would not make it another mile. Sienna Bradford stumbled through the Colorado snow, her thin traveling cloak doing nothing against the bitter wind that howled across the January plains. She had been foolish to leave Denver alone, foolish to trust the stagecoach driver who had abandoned her at the last way station when he decided the mountain pass was too dangerous. Foolish to think she could walk the remaining distance to Fort Garland, where her aunt supposedly waited with open arms and a teaching position at the settlement school. Now the sun was setting behind gray clouds, the temperature was dropping fast, and her legs refused to carry her any further. She fell to her knees first, then forward onto her hands. The snow burned against her exposed skin. Sienna tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out. The world tilted sideways, and she found herself lying on her side, watching snowflakes drift past her eyes. She thought about her parents back in Philadelphia, how they had objected to her traveling west. They had been right. She should have stayed where she was safe and warm, teaching proper young ladies in proper schools, attending proper social functions with proper young men who bored her to tears. But she had wanted adventure. She had wanted to see the frontier, to make a real difference in the lives of children who desperately needed education. She had wanted something more than the suffocating expectations of Philadelphia society. Now she would die for wanting too much. The cold stopped hurting after a while. That should have frightened her, but instead she felt strangely peaceful. She closed her eyes and let the darkness come. Owen Parker had been ranching in Colorado Territory for 6 years, ever since he turned 20 and decided Philadelphia society was slowly killing his soul. His father had disowned him for abandoning the family shipping business, but Owen had never regretted his choice. He loved the harsh beauty of the land, the honest work of raising cattle, the simple satisfaction of building something with his own hands. He had purchased land 5 miles outside Fort Garland and built a small ranch house, then spent years expanding his herd and his territory until he had one of the most successful operations in the region. He was riding home from town with supplies when he saw the dark shape in the snow. At first he thought it was a fallen deer, but as he urged his horse closer, he realized with horror that it was a woman. She was lying motionless, her face pale as death, ice crystals forming on her eyelashes. Owen was off his horse in an instant, dropping to his knees beside her. He pressed his fingers to her throat and felt a flutter of pulse, weak but present. "Madam? Madam, can you hear me?" No response. Her lips were blue and her skin was like ice. He knew he had to get her warm immediately or she would be dead within the hour. His ranch was still 3 miles away, but it was closer than town. He gathered her into his arms, shocked at how light she was, how fragile she felt against his chest. She was young, probably in her early 20s, with dark hair that had come loose from its pins and tumbled across his arm. Owen managed to get back on his horse while holding her, settling her across his lap. She was so cold that he could feel it through his heavy coat. He wrapped his arms around her and kicked his horse into a fast trot, the fastest pace he dared risk given the snowy conditions and his precious cargo. Every minute counted now. The ride felt endless. Owen talked to her even though she could not hear him, telling her to hold on, telling her she would be all right, telling her his name, and that he would take care of her. The wind bit at his exposed face, and his arms ached from holding her steady, but he did not slow down. When his ranch finally came into view, he had never been more grateful to see those wooden buildings. He carried her straight into the house, kicking the door open and heading for the fireplace. The fire had burned low while he was in town, but he stirred it up quickly, adding logs until flames roared. He laid her on the rug in front of the hearth and began removing her wet clothes with shaking hands. He knew it was improper, but propriety meant nothing if she died. Her traveling dress was soaked through, her undergarments damp and icy. He stripped her down to her chemise and wrapped her in every blanket he owned, then rubbed her hands and feet, trying to restore circulation. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, breathe, wake up." Her chest rose and fell shallowly, but her eyes remained closed. Owen knew about frostbite from treating his cattle and horses. He had seen men lose fingers and toes to the cold. He examined her hands carefully in the firelight and saw that her fingertips were white and waxy. Not good. He fetched a basin of lukewarm water and submerged her hands, keeping them there while he continued rubbing her feet. An hour passed, then 2. Owen never left her side. He changed the water when it grew cold, added more logs to the fire, wrapped her more tightly in blankets. He heated broth on the stove, knowing she would need something warm inside her when she woke. If she woke. He refused to consider the alternative. Just before midnight, she stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, and she made a small sound somewhere between a moan and a sigh. Owen leaned closer, his heart pounding with relief. "That is it," he said softly. "Come back. You are safe now. You are warm." Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually clearing. They were blue, he noticed, the color of a summer sky. She stared at him for a long moment, confusion written across her face. "Where?" Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and weak. "My ranch, 5 miles outside Fort Garland. I found you on the trail. You were nearly frozen to death." She blinked, processing this information. Then her eyes widened and she tried to sit up, suddenly aware that she was wearing very little under the blankets. Owen gently pushed her back down. "Do not move yet. You need to stay warm and rest. I apologize for the impropriety, but I had to get you out of those wet clothes. You would have died otherwise." Color flooded her pale cheeks, though whether from embarrassment or the returning circulation he could not tell. "I understand, thank you. You saved my life." "What is your name? What were you doing out there alone?" "Sienna Bradford. I was traveling to Fort Garland from Denver. The stagecoach driver left me at the last way station and I thought I could walk the rest of the way, but I was wrong about the distance and the weather turned worse than expected." Her words came out in a rush, as if she needed to explain herself to justify her presence. "I am supposed to be teaching at the settlement school. My aunt arranged the position." "Your aunt?" Owen frowned. "Who is your aunt?" "Margaret Bradford. She wrote that she was living in Fort Garland and needed help with the school." Owen's frown deepened. He knew most of the people in Fort Garland by name or reputation, and he had never heard of a Margaret Bradford. But that was a concern for tomorrow. Right now, Sienna needed rest and warmth and food. "I am Owen Parker," he said. "This is my ranch. You are welcome to stay as long as you need to recover. Right now, I'm going to help you drink some broth, and then you need to sleep." She nodded, too exhausted to argue. He supported her shoulders while she sipped the warm broth, taking small, careful swallows. When she had drunk half the bowl, her eyes began to droop. Owen lowered her back onto the pillows and tucked the blankets around her. "Sleep," he said. "I will be right here if you need anything." "Thank you," she whispered. And then she was asleep, her breathing deep and even. Owen sat back and ran his hands through his hair, his body finally acknowledging how tired he was. He had been riding for hours, had carried her for miles, had spent the entire evening fighting to save her life. But he could not rest yet. He needed to keep the fire going, needed to monitor her condition through the night. He made himself a pot of strong coffee and settled into his chair, watching over her as the night stretched on. Morning came gray and cold, with fresh snow falling outside. Sienna woke slowly, gradually becoming aware of warmth and comfort and the smell of coffee and frying bacon. She opened her eyes and found herself still lying in front of a fireplace, still wrapped in blankets, but now there was daylight filtering through the windows, and the man from last night was cooking at a small stove in the corner of the room. Owen. His name was Owen Parker. She studied him in the morning light. He was tall, probably 6 feet or more, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscular build of a man who worked hard every day. His hair was dark brown, slightly too long, and he had several days' worth of stubble on his jaw. He wore simple clothes, a flannel shirt and work pants, but he carried himself with a quiet confidence that suggested he was comfortable in his own skin. She guessed he was close to her age, maybe a few years older, 25 or 26 perhaps. He turned and saw her watching him. His eyes were brown, she noticed, warm and concerned. "How are you feeling?" "Warm," she said, and realized it was true. She was deliciously, blissfully warm. "My hands hurt, though." "That is good, actually. It means the blood is flowing again. May I see?" She pulled her hands from under the blankets and held them out. The fingertips were red and swollen, painful to move, but the dangerous white color was gone. Owen examined them carefully, his touch gentle. "You were lucky. No permanent damage that I can see. Though they will be sore for a while, your feet are the same. You should make a full recovery." Relief flooded through her. "Thanks to you. If you had not found me, I would be dead." "What possessed you to try walking in that weather?" There was no judgment in his voice, only curiosity. Sienna felt heat rise to her cheeks again. Foolishness. Stubbornness. "The stagecoach driver said it was only a few miles to Fort Garland, that I could easily make it before dark. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I was tired of traveling, tired of delays, eager to reach my destination and begin my new life. I should have waited for better weather or found another way. Instead, I nearly died for my impatience." Owen brought her a plate of bacon and eggs and a cup of coffee. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is that you are alive and safe now. I will ride into Fort Garland today and find your aunt. Let her know you are here." Sienna nodded, though something nagged at her. She could not shake the feeling that something was not quite right about her aunt's letters, but she could not identify what. The correspondence had been brief and formal, offering her the teaching position and urging her to come quickly. At the time, Sienna had been so eager to escape Philadelphia that she had not questioned the details. Now, lying in a stranger's house miles from anywhere, she wondered if she had been reckless in more ways than one. "I should get dressed," she said, then realized she had no idea where her clothes were or even if they were still wearable. "I hung your dress to dry overnight. It is not in the best condition, but it is serviceable. Your other things are there too." He gestured to a chair near the fire where her garments were draped. "I will step outside while you dress. Take your time." He left, closing the door behind him, and Sienna struggled to her feet. Her legs were shaky and her whole body ached, but she managed to walk to the chair. Her dress was wrinkled and stained, but dry and intact. Getting dressed took longer than it should have, her sore fingers fumbling with buttons and laces, but eventually she was clothed and decent. She attempted to do something with her hair, pinning it up as best she could without a mirror or proper implements. When she opened the door, she found Owen tending to his horses in the small barn attached to the house. He looked up when she appeared and smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "Much better. Are you strong enough to ride into town? I can take you on my horse and we can find your aunt." "Yes, I think so." Sienna was not entirely sure, but she could not impose on this man's hospitality any longer than necessary. He had already done so much for her. They rode together, Sienna sitting in front of Owen on his large bay gelding. She tried not to think about how close they were, how improper this was, how his arms were wrapped around her to hold the reins. She told herself it was practical necessity and nothing more. But she could not help noticing how solid and warm he felt behind her, how safe she felt in his presence. Fort Garland was a small settlement clustered around an old military fort that had been abandoned several years earlier. The town consisted of a main street with a general store, a saloon, a boarding house, and a handful of other buildings. It was not much to look at, especially compared to Philadelphia, but Sienna felt a flutter of excitement anyway. This was her new home, her fresh start, her adventure. Owen guided his horse to the general store and helped Sienna dismount. Inside, a middle-aged woman with graying hair looked up from behind the counter. "Owen Parker, good to see you. What brings you to town 2 days in a row?" "Hello, Mrs. Amelia. I am looking for information about someone." "Do you know Margaret Bradford? She supposedly lives here and runs the settlement school." Mrs. Amelia frowned, her face puzzled. Margaret Bradford? Never heard of her. And we do not have a settlement school. The nearest school is in Alamosa, about 15 miles north. Sienna felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. That cannot be right. My aunt wrote to me. She said she was here, that she needed a teacher for the school. She gave me this address. She fumbled in her bag and pulled out the last letter she had received, handing it to Mrs. Amelia. The older woman read it carefully, then shook her head. This is Fort Garland, all right, but there is no school here and no Margaret Bradford. I know everyone in town, and I have never heard that name. Are you sure you have the right place? The letter says Fort Garland, Colorado. Sienna's voice shook. I do not understand. Why would she lie to me? Owen took the letter and examined it, his expression grim. The handwriting is feminine, but the postmark is from Denver, not Fort Garland. When did you last see your aunt in person? I have never met her. She is my father's sister, but they had a falling out years ago before I was born. She left Philadelphia and moved west, and they never reconciled, but she wrote to me 6 months ago, saying she wanted to reconnect, that she had heard I was a teacher and she needed help at her school. We exchanged several letters, and she seemed so genuine, so kind. Why would she bring me all this way if none of it was true, Mrs. Amelia's expression softened with sympathy. I am sorry, dear. It sounds like you were deceived. I do not know why someone would do such a thing, but you are certainly not the first person to be lured west with false promises. Sienna felt tears sting her eyes and fought them back. She would not cry, not here, not in front of strangers. I used almost all my savings to make this trip. I gave up my position in Philadelphia. I have nowhere to go and no means to return. You can stay at the boarding house for now, Mrs. Amelia offered. Mrs. Harriet charges reasonable rates, and she is a good woman. You can figure out your next steps from there. I have very little money left. Sienna hated admitting it, but there was no point in pretending otherwise. Owen spoke up, his voice calm and steady. You will stay at my ranch until we sort this out. I have plenty of room, and you still need to recover your strength. We can decide what to do next once you are feeling better. I cannot impose on you like that. You have already done so much. It is not an imposition. You have nowhere else to go, and I am not about to leave you stranded. Besides, I could use help around the ranch. If you are willing to work, you can earn your keep and save some money. Sienna stared at him, overwhelmed by his kindness. She knew she should refuse, that accepting his offer was wildly improper, that staying alone at a ranch with an unmarried man would destroy her reputation. But what reputation did she have here? No one knew her. And what choice did she have? She could not afford the boarding house for more than a few days. She had no job, no prospects, no family to turn to. Are you sure? She asked quietly. I am sure. Come on, let me get the supplies I need and we will head back. They left the store, Sienna's mind spinning with confusion and fear and a strange sense of relief. Her life had just fallen apart. Her plans had turned to dust, but somehow she felt like she might be exactly where she was supposed to be. The next few days settled into an unexpected rhythm. Sienna recovered her strength gradually, her sore hands and feet healing, her body adjusting to the altitude and the cold. Owen was a careful host, making sure she had everything she needed but giving her space and privacy. He converted a small storage room into a bedroom for her, bringing in a proper bed and a stove to keep it warm. He cooked meals and did not expect her to wait on him, treating her more like a guest than a servant. But Sienna could not accept charity indefinitely. She began helping around the house, cleaning and cooking and mending clothes. Owen protested at first, but she insisted. You said I could work for my keep. Let me do that. I need to feel useful, not like a burden. He relented, and gradually she took over the household tasks, freeing him to focus on the ranch work. She discovered she enjoyed the simple labor, the satisfaction of keeping a home running smoothly. It was different from teaching, but no less valuable, and she found herself watching Owen when he came in from working with the cattle, noticing the easy strength with which he moved, the patience with which he handled the animals, the quiet competence that seemed to characterize everything he did. They talked in the evening, sitting by the fire after supper. Sienna told him about Philadelphia, about growing up in a wealthy family that valued appearance over substance, about her work teaching at a school for young ladies who cared more about fashion than literature. She told him about the suffocating social expectations, the endless rounds of meaningless parties, the parade of suitors her mother tried to push on her. "Why did you become a teacher?" Owen asked one night. "Because I wanted to do something real, something that mattered. My parents thought it was beneath me, working for money when we had plenty, but I needed to prove I could make my own way. And I loved the teaching itself, watching young minds open up to new ideas. I just wished I was teaching children who really needed education, not wealthy girls who were just biding time until they made suitable marriages." "Is that why you wanted to come west? To teach children who needed it more?" "Partially, but also because I wanted to escape. I wanted to prove I could be independent, that I did not need my family's money or protection. I wanted adventure and purpose and a life that was mine, and not just an extension of my parents' ambitions," she laughed bitterly. "Instead, I proved I am naive and reckless and cannot even make it down a road without nearly dying." "You are not naive or reckless. You are brave. Most people spend their whole lives too afraid to leave what is comfortable and familiar. You gave up everything you knew to chase something better. That takes real courage." Sienna looked at him, surprised by the conviction in his voice. "You did the same thing. You left Philadelphia too." "I did. My father wanted me to take over the family shipping business. I was supposed to marry a suitable young woman from a suitable family and spend my life managing ledgers and attending board meetings. I tried it for a year and felt like I was slowly suffocating. So I left, came west with nothing but what I could carry, and built this place from nothing. Does your family ever forgive you?" "My father disowned me. My mother writes occasionally, but the letters are full of disappointment and pleas for me to come home. I do not think they will ever understand why I chose this life." He stared into the fire. "But I have never regretted it. Not for a moment." "I understand that. Even with everything that has gone wrong, even though I was deceived and nearly died and have no idea what I will do next, I do not regret coming here. Does that sound mad?" "No, it sounds like you know who you are and what you want. That is rare." Their eyes met and held, and Sienna felt something shift between them, a connection forming that went beyond gratitude or convenience. She looked away first, suddenly flustered, and changed the subject to something safer. But the connection remained, growing stronger each day. Sienna found herself thinking about Owen constantly, noticing small things about him. The way he hummed while he worked, the gentleness with which he handled the animals, the way his whole face changed when he smiled, the sound of his laugh, rare but genuine. She caught him watching her sometimes, his expression thoughtful, and wondered what he was thinking. She knew she was falling for him. She tried to fight it, reminding herself that she was dependent on his charity, that she had no future to offer him, that letting herself care for him was dangerous and foolish, but her heart did not listen to logic. Winter deepened, and the snow piled higher. Sienna could not leave even if she wanted to, the roads impassable until spring. She told herself she was only staying because she had no choice, but that was not entirely true. She stayed because she wanted to, because she had never felt more at home than she did in this small ranch house with this quiet cowboy who had saved her life. One evening in late February, Owen came in from checking the cattle looking troubled. Sienna was making stew for dinner and looked up when he entered. "What is wrong?" "Storm coming, a bad one. I can feel it in the air and the animals are restless. We need to prepare." He paused, then added, "It might last several days. We could be snowed in completely." "What do we need to do?" They spent the next few hours preparing, bringing in extra firewood, filling every container with water, checking that the livestock had shelter and food. The storm hit just after dark, wind howling around the house like a living thing, snow falling so thick it was impossible to see more than a few feet. Owen checked the barn one last time, making sure the horses and the few cattle he kept close to the house were secure, then came back inside covered in snow. Sienna helped him out of his wet coat and handed him hot coffee. "How bad is it?" "Bad. This will last at least 3 days, maybe more. We have enough supplies, but we are stuck inside until it passes." Being trapped inside together should have been awkward, but instead it felt natural. They cooked meals together, played card games Owen taught her, read books aloud to each other. They talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams and fears. The forced closeness broke down the last walls between them, and Sienna found herself opening up in ways she never had before. On the third night of the storm, they were sitting by the fire after supper when Owen suddenly said, "Sienna, there is something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about your situation, about what you will do when spring comes and you can leave. And I realize I do not want you to leave. I know that is selfish. I know you have your own life and your own plans, but these past weeks with you here have been the happiest I have been since I came west. You make this house feel like a home instead of just a place I sleep. And I hope that you might feel something for me too." Sienna's breath caught. "Owen, you do not have to answer now. I just needed you to know. When spring comes, if you want to go, I will take you wherever you want to go, and I will give you money for a fresh start. But if you wanted to stay, if you thought you could be happy here with me, I would be the luckiest man alive." She stared at him, her heart pounding. Everything she had been feeling, everything she had been trying to deny, surged up inside her. "I do not want to leave. I have not wanted to leave for weeks now. I was just too afraid to admit it, too afraid that I was reading too much into your kindness. It stopped being kindness a long time ago." His voice was rough with emotion. "Sienna, I am falling in love with you. Maybe I have been since the moment I found you in the snow, and you were so fragile and beautiful, and I knew I would do anything to save you." "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I thought I was mad, that it was too fast, that I was just grateful and confused, but it is more than that, so much more." Owen crossed the space between them and took her hands gently, mindful of her healing fingers. "Then stay. Be with me. Build a life here. I know it is not what you planned, not the adventure you thought you were coming to, but we could make it an adventure together. Yes." The word came out without hesitation. "Yes, I will stay. I will build a life with you. This is exactly the adventure I was meant to have." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper as she responded. Sienna wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring all her feelings into it, all the fear and relief and hope and love. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and smiling. "We should probably get married," Owen said, a hint of laughter in his voice. "For propriety's sake, if nothing else." "Yes, we probably should, though I think propriety went out the window when I started living here unchaperoned." "Fair point, but I want to do this right. I want you to be my wife properly and officially. Will you marry me, Sienna Bradford?" "Yes, Owen Parker, I will marry you." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking about the future, stealing kisses between words. The storm raged outside, but inside they were warm and safe and happier than either had ever been. The storm broke on the 5th day, revealing a world transformed by snow. Everything was white and pristine and beautiful. As soon as the roads were passable, Owen took Sienna into Fort Garland to speak with the circuit preacher who came through once a month. They were lucky. He was due to arrive in 2 days. They arranged for him to perform the ceremony and spread word around the small town. Mrs. Amelia was delighted by the news and insisted on helping Sienna prepare. "I knew something was brewing between you two. Owen has not looked this happy in all the years I have known him. You are good for him, dear." "He is good for me too," Sienna said softly. "He saved my life in more ways than one." The wedding took place on a bright March morning in the small church building that doubled as a community gathering hall. Most of the town turned out curious about the Eastern woman who had captured their local rancher's heart. Sienna wore a simple dress that Mrs. Amelia helped her make from fabric bought at the general store. It was not the elaborate wedding gown she might have worn in Philadelphia, but she loved it more because it represented her new life, her new self. Owen wore a clean shirt and his best pants, his hair neatly trimmed, his face freshly shaved. When Sienna walked down the aisle toward him, his face lit up with such joy that several women in the congregation sighed audibly. He took her hands and spoke his vows clearly and firmly, his eyes never leaving hers. Sienna spoke her own vows with equal conviction, promising to love and honor him, to build a life together, to face whatever challenges came their way side by side. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her with such tenderness that Sienna felt tears slip down her cheeks. They celebrated with a simple reception, the townspeople bringing food and well wishes. It was nothing like the grand society wedding Sienna had attended in Philadelphia, but it was perfect. These people had welcomed her, accepted her, embraced her as one of their own. This was her community now, her home. That night, in the ranch house that was now truly theirs together, Owen carried Sienna over the threshold and set her down gently in front of the fireplace, where he had first brought her back from the edge of death. "I never imagined when I found you in the snow that you would become my wife," he said, his arms still around her waist. "You were this mysterious, beautiful woman who appeared out of nowhere. I just wanted to save you. Now I cannot imagine my life without you." "I never imagined any of this," Sienna replied, reaching up to touch his face. "I thought I was coming west to teach school, and instead I found you, found this, found myself. It is strange how life works." "Strange and wonderful?" He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then her lips. "I love you, Sienna Parker." She smiled at her new name. "I love you too, Owen Parker. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for loving me. Always. For the rest of our lives." They made love that night with tenderness and passion, discovering each other, learning each other's bodies and hearts. Sienna had never felt so cherished, so desired, so completely herself. In Owen's arms, she was neither the proper Philadelphia lady her parents wanted her to be, nor the independent adventurer she thought she needed to be. She was simply Sienna, beloved and whole. Spring came gradually, the snow melting to reveal brown grass that would soon turn green. The cattle that had been sheltering through the winter spread out across the range, and new calves were born. Owen taught Sienna the rhythms of ranch life, and she proved to be a quick learner, unafraid of hard work. She helped with the animals, learned to ride properly, managed the household with efficiency. She wrote to her parents, telling them about her marriage, expecting anger or disappointment. Instead, her mother's response was surprisingly warm, saying that if Sienna was happy, they were happy for her. One afternoon in May, a stranger rode up to the ranch house. Sienna was hanging laundry and looked up warily as the woman dismounted. She was middle-aged, well-dressed, with sharp eyes and a calculating expression. "Can I help you?" Sienna asked. "Are you Sienna Bradford? Or I suppose it is Sienna Parker now." Cold dread washed over Sienna. "Who are you?" "My name is Margaret Bradford. I believe you have been looking for me." Sienna stared at her in shock. Owen came out of the barn, alerted by the sound of voices, and moved to stand beside his wife. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice hard. Margaret smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. "I want to explain, and to apologize. May I come inside?" Sienna wanted to refuse, but curiosity won out. They went inside, and Margaret sat at the table, accepting coffee but nothing else. "I suppose you want to know why I lied to you?" Margaret began. "The truth is, I am your aunt, or was. I was married to your father's brother before he died. When he passed, your family cut me off completely, said I was no longer part of the family. They left me with nothing. I survived, built a life for myself out here, but I never forgot how they treated me." "So you decided to take revenge on me?" Sienna asked, anger rising. I had nothing to do with what happened to you. I was not even born yet. I know. And I am ashamed of what I did. I was bitter and angry, and I wanted to hurt your family the way they hurt me. I thought if I could lure you out here under false pretenses, it would cause them pain. I did not think about what it would do to you. I did not think of you as a real person, just as a pawn in my vendetta. Margaret looked down at her hands. But when I heard you had nearly died, when I learned you had married a rancher and settled here, I realized what I had done. I nearly killed an innocent woman because of my own bitterness. I came to apologize, even though I do not deserve your forgiveness. Sienna sat silent for a long moment, processing this. Part of her wanted to rage at this woman who had nearly cost her everything, but another part felt only pity. I forgive you, she finally said, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let your bitterness poison my life. You thought you were destroying me, but instead you gave me the greatest gift. You brought me here to this place, to Owen. I found love and purpose and a real home. So thank you, Margaret Bradford, for your failed revenge. Margaret looked up, tears in her eyes. You are a better person than anyone in your family ever was. I'm sorry, truly. She left shortly after, riding away into the afternoon sun. Sienna watched her go, Owen's arm around her shoulders. Are you all right? He asked. I am. It is strange, but I really do not feel angry. She thought she was hurting me, but she gave me everything I ever wanted. How can I be angry about that? You are remarkable, you know that? I am lucky. If you had not found me that day, her plan would have succeeded. I would have died, and she would have had her revenge. But I did find you, and now we have this life together. That is what matters. As summer arrived, Sienna settled completely into her new life. She made friends in Fort Garland, particularly Mrs. Amelia and several other ranch wives who welcomed her into their circle. She discovered she had a talent for healing, learning from the local doctor who sometimes visited the ranch. She began helping with difficult births, both human and animal, and treating minor injuries and illnesses. It was satisfying work, using her mind and her hands to help others. She also started a small school teaching the few children in the area who had no other access to education. It was nothing like the fancy Philadelphia school she had left behind, just a few students meeting in her home 2 days a week. But it fulfilled her dream of teaching children who truly needed it. Owen built her a small schoolhouse on their property, and she filled it with books and supplies ordered from Denver. Their marriage deepened through the seasons, tested by hard work and isolation, but strengthened by mutual respect and genuine love. They learned to work together, to support each other's dreams, to laugh together at the end of long days. They argued sometimes, usually about minor things, but they always worked through it, neither willing to let resentment build. In November, Sienna realized she was pregnant. She told Owen one night after dinner, nervous about his reaction. They had not planned this so soon, had not even discussed children yet. But Owen's face lit up with pure joy. Really? We are going to have a baby? Yes. Sometime in late May or early June, I think. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. This is wonderful. Amazing. We are going to be parents. Are you ready for this? It is going to change everything. I am ready. We will figure it out together, just like we figure out everything else. The pregnancy was difficult at times. The altitude and the hard work taking their toll on Sienna's body. But the local women rallied around her, sharing advice and remedies, checking on her regularly. Owen was endlessly patient, taking over more of the household work, insisting she rest more. He talked to her growing belly every night, telling the baby stories about the ranch and making plans for their future. In late May, just as the wildflowers were blooming across the range, Sienna went into labor. Owen rode for the midwife, Mrs. Harriet from the boarding house, who had delivered most of the babies in the area. The labor was long and painful, stretching through the night and into the next day. Owen held Sienna's hand the entire time, whispering encouragement, wiping her forehead. never leaving her side. Finally, as the sun began to set on the second day, their son was born. He was small but healthy, with dark hair like his father and blue eyes like his mother. Sienna held him and wept with exhaustion and relief and overwhelming love. "He is perfect," Owen said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are perfect. Thank you. Thank you for this gift." "What should we name him?" Sienna asked, looking down at the tiny face of their son. "I was thinking Thomas, after my grandfather, the only one in my family who supported me coming west. Thomas Parker, I like it. Hello, Thomas. Welcome to your home." The baby let out a small cry and Owen laughed, a sound of pure happiness. He kissed Sienna's forehead and then carefully took his son into his arms, holding him with wonder and careful tenderness. "I am going to teach you everything," Owen told the baby. "How to ride, how to rope cattle, how to read the weather, how to be a good man, how to love as deeply as I love your mother." Sienna watched them together, her husband and her son, and felt complete. This was not the life she had planned, not the adventure she thought she was seeking, but it was so much better than anything she could have imagined. The first year with Thomas was exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. He was a demanding baby, colicky and fussy, but both parents were devoted to him. Owen proved to be a natural father, patient with the crying, happy to walk the floor at night while Sienna slept. They took turns caring for him, neither expecting the other to shoulder the burden alone. As Thomas grew into a toddler, curious and energetic, Sienna found herself pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect. Their daughter was born in April, 2 years after Thomas. They named her Sarah, and she was as calm and easy as Thomas had been difficult. She slept through the night almost immediately, nursed well, smiled at everyone. Owen joked that God was making up for Thomas's infancy. The ranch prospered as their family grew. Owen expanded his herd and his land, earning a reputation for quality cattle and fair dealing. Sienna's school grew too as more families settled in the area. She hired another teacher to help, a young woman from Denver who reminded Sienna of herself a few years earlier, full of idealism and determination. Life settled into a rhythm, seasons passing in their familiar patterns. Spring with the new calves and the greening of the grass, summer with long days of work under the endless sky, fall with the cattle drives and the preparation for winter, winter with the cold and the snow and the enforced closeness that Sienna had learned to cherish. When Thomas was 5 and Sarah was 3, Sienna found herself pregnant again. She had thought they were done having children, that their family was complete, but apparently fate had other plans. This pregnancy was the hardest yet, her body struggling with the demands of carrying a child while chasing 2 active youngsters. Owen insisted she rest more, taking over even more of the household work and hiring a girl from town to help. In December, during a blizzard that reminded Sienna eerily of the storm that had brought her and Owen together, she went into labor. The midwife could not reach them through the snow, so Owen delivered the baby himself with only Sienna's instructions to guide him. It was terrifying and primal, and somehow perfect. Their second son was born at midnight during the worst of the storm, howling his way into the world with impressive lung power. "He is a fighter, like his mother," Owen said, wrapping the baby in warm blankets. "What should we name this one?" "James," Sienna said without hesitation, "after my grandfather, who always believed I could do anything I set my mind to. James Parker. Welcome to the family, little fighter." With 3 children under the age of 6, life became wonderfully chaotic. The house was always full of noise and laughter and the controlled chaos of child rearing. Owen proved to be an endlessly patient father, teaching the children about the ranch, reading to them every night, making each one feel special and loved. Sienna balanced motherhood with her teaching, grateful for the help of the hired girl and the support of the community. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and followed his father everywhere. Sarah was creative and empathetic, more interested in books and drawing than cattle. James was pure mischief, constantly getting into trouble, fearless and charming in equal measure. They were completely different but bound together by deep sibling love. The years passed quickly, marked by milestones and memories. Thomas's first ride alone, Sarah's first piano recital when they finally managed to get a piano shipped from Denver, James's first day of school, which he tried to escape 3 times before noon, family picnics by the river in summer, Christmas celebrations with the whole town, birthday parties, and harvest festivals and Sunday dinners. Sienna's parents came to visit when Thomas was 8, Sarah was 6, and James was 3. It was awkward at first, her father stiff and formal, her mother trying too hard. But the children broke through their reserve, Thomas showing his grandfather around the ranch with pride, Sarah playing piano for her grandmother, James climbing into their laps with complete trust. By the end of their month-long visit, both parents had to admit that Sienna had chosen well, that this life made her happy in ways Philadelphia never could have. "I was wrong to oppose your going west," her father said the night before they left. "I thought you needed our world, our money, our position. But you needed this, freedom and purpose and real love. I am proud of you, daughter, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say so." Sienna hugged him, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Her mother pulled her aside separately. "That husband of yours is a good man. He looks at you like you are the center of his world. Hold on to that. Not many people find love like that." "I know. I count my blessings every day." When Sienna was 35 and Owen was 37, they had their last child, a surprise daughter born when they thought they were done having babies. They named her Grace because she was an unexpected blessing, a grace note in their already full life. She was born in spring, delivered easily after Sienna's previous difficult pregnancies, and she was sunshine personified from the start. Always smiling, always happy, beloved by her older siblings. By the time Grace was 5, Thomas was 17 and talking about expanding the ranch, buying adjacent land, building his own legacy. Sarah was 15 and torn between her love of art and the practical need to plan for her future. James was 12 and driving everyone crazy with his endless energy and schemes, and Grace was 5 and following everyone around, asking endless questions, bringing joy wherever she went. Owen and Sienna sat on their porch one evening, watching their children and marveling at the life they had built. Thomas was teaching James how to rope, though James was paying more attention to making his little sister laugh. Sarah was sitting under a tree with her sketchbook, drawing the scene. "Do you ever think about how different your life could have been?" Owen asked, his arm around Sienna's shoulders. "If that stagecoach driver had not left you, if you had made it to Fort Garland, if I had not been riding home that particular day." "Sometimes," Sienna admitted, "but only to be grateful it did not happen that way. I might have found my imaginary aunt, or found no one at all, or tried to make my way somewhere else. I would have survived, I think, but I would not have been happy. Not like this. This life, this family, you. This is what I was meant to find." I think about it too, about how close I came to losing you before I even knew you. If I had been 5 minutes later, if the snow had covered you, if I had taken a different trail home, you would have died, and I would never have known what I was missing. The thought terrifies me. But you did find me. That is what matters. You found me and saved me and loved me and gave me this beautiful life. She gestured to their children, to the ranch spread out before them, to the mountains rising in the distance. All of this came from that one moment when you decided to stop and see what was lying in the snow. One decision that changed both our lives forever. The best decision I ever made. He kissed her temple. "I love you, Sienna Parker. After all these years, after everything we have been through, I love you more today than I did the day we married. I love you too. Always." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, Inside the house, they could hear Grace singing to herself, making up songs about horses and flowers. Thomas's deep voice responded to something James said, both boys laughing. Sarah came up the steps and settled at their feet, showing them her latest drawing. This was Sienna's life now. Not the one she had planned. Not the one her parents wanted for her. Not the one Margaret Bradford's deception had promised. But it was hers, built from snow and cold and near death and the kindness of a cowboy who stopped to help a stranger. It was a life full of love and laughter, hard work and honest joy, challenges met and overcome together. Years continued to pass in their steady rhythm. Thomas married a local girl and built his own ranch on land adjacent to Owen's, raising cattle and a family of his own. Sarah surprised everyone by moving to Denver to study art, though she came home often and eventually returned permanently, teaching art at the school and painting landscapes that captured the wild beauty of Colorado. James joined the Army for a few years, sowing his wild oats and having adventures, before returning home to partner with Thomas in expanding the family ranching operation. Grace married the new doctor in Fort Garland and settled in town, though she visited the ranch so often she might as well have stayed. Owen and Sienna became grandparents, then great-grandparents, watching their family grow and spread like the roots of a strong tree. They celebrated 50th wedding anniversaries and milestone birthdays, gathering the whole clan for big, noisy celebrations that filled the ranch house with love and laughter. As they grew older, they slowed down, passing the active work of the ranch to Thomas and James, content to offer advice and enjoy the fruits of their labor. They spent their days sitting on the porch, watching the cattle graze, remembering the years behind them, and savoring each moment they still had together. One spring day, when Sienna was 70 and Owen was 72, they took a walk together to the spot where he had found her so many years ago. It was marked now with a small stone that Thomas had placed there, engraved with the date, and a simple message. Here began our family's story. Sienna stood at the spot and tried to remember what it felt like to be that desperate, frozen girl. It seemed like another lifetime, another person entirely. That Sienna had been lost and afraid, fleeing one life and searching for another. This Sienna knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. "Do you ever regret it?" Owen asked, as if reading her thoughts. "Giving up the life you could have had for this one?" She turned to him, this man who had been her partner and lover and best friend for half a century, and smiled. "Not for a single moment. You saved my life that day, Owen Parker, and then you spent every day since making that life worth living. How could I regret that?" He pulled her close, his arms still strong despite the years, and kissed her with the same tenderness he had shown on their wedding day. "I am the one who was saved. You brought life and love to this lonely ranch. You gave me a family and a purpose beyond just survival. You are my miracle, Sienna. You always have been." They walked home hand in hand, two old people who had loved each other through everything life could throw at them and emerged stronger for it. Behind them, the mountains stood eternal and unchanging. Ahead, their home waited, full of memories and love. That evening, surrounded by children and grandchildren who had gathered for Sunday dinner, Owen stood and raised his glass. "To my wife," he said, his voice still strong and clear, "who fell from the sky into my life 50 years ago and changed everything, to the woman who chose adventure and found love, to the mother of my children and the heart of my home, to Sienna, the bravest, most remarkable person I have ever known." "To Sienna," everyone chorused, raising their glasses. Sienna felt tears sting her eyes as she looked around the table at the faces she loved most in the world. Every single person there existed because a stagecoach driver had abandoned a foolish girl, because a winter storm had struck at just the right time, because a cowboy had been riding home at the exact moment when she needed him most. One series of choices, some hers and some beyond her control, had led to this moment, this family, this life. To Owen, she said, raising her own glass. Who found me when I was lost? Who warmed me when I was cold? Who loved me when I needed it most? Who carried me miles when I could not walk, and then walked beside me for the rest of our lives? To my husband, my partner, my love. To Owen, the family echoed. They drank. And then the meal continued, conversation flowing, laughter ringing out, children running between the adults. It was chaotic and beautiful and perfect. This was the adventure Sienna had sought when she left Philadelphia all those years ago. Not the lonely independence she had imagined, but something far better. A shared adventure, a love story written across decades, a family built on the foundation of two people who found each other against all odds. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, Sienna and Owen lay in bed together, their bodies fitting together with the ease of long practice. Through the window, they could see stars scattered across the Colorado sky, bright and endless. Tell me again, Sienna said softly. Tell me about the day you found me. It was a story they had told many times over the years, to their children and grandchildren, to each other on quiet evenings. But Owen never tired of telling it, and Sienna never tired of hearing it. It was cold, Owen began, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. Colder than it had been all winter. I was riding home from town thinking about nothing in particular when I saw something dark in the snow ahead. At first I thought it was an animal, maybe a deer that had fallen. But as I got closer, I realized it was a woman. You. What did you think when you saw me? I thought I was too late. You were so still, so pale, like a statue carved from ice. But I checked for a pulse anyway, and there it was, faint but present. And I knew I had to save you. I did not know who you were or why you were there, but I knew I could not let you die. And then you carried me. 3 miles through the snow. You were light, but the cold made everything harder. My arms were numb by the time we reached the ranch, but I did not care. I just knew I had to get you warm, had to bring you back. He paused, his hand finding hers under the blankets. I did not know then that I was carrying my future in my arms, the woman who would become my wife, the mother of my children, the love of my life. All I knew was that you needed help, and I would do anything to save you. You did save me. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, Owen corrected gently. You saved me from loneliness, from becoming hard and closed off. You brought warmth and light to my life. We saved each other. Sienna snuggled closer, breathing in the familiar scent of him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Tell me the rest. I brought you inside and stripped off your wet clothes. Your fingers were white with frostbite, and I was so afraid you would lose them. But I warmed you slowly, carefully, the way I had learned with frozen animals. I talked to you even though you could not hear me. I told you that you would be all right, that I would take care of you. And then after hours, you opened your eyes. And they were the most beautiful eyes I had ever seen. Sienna smiled in the darkness. What happened next? You looked at me like you were trying to figure out if I was real or a dream, and then you asked where you were. And I knew right in that moment that my life had just changed forever. I just did not know how much. And here we are 50 years later. Here we are, Owen agreed, still together, still in love, still grateful for that cold day when fate brought you to me. They fell silent, holding each other, two souls that had found each other against impossible odds and built a life more beautiful than either could have imagined. Outside, the Colorado night stretched vast and starlit, full of the same wild beauty that had drawn them both west all those years ago. Sienna felt Owen's breathing slow and deepen as he fell asleep, but she stayed awake a while longer, thinking about the strange paths life takes. If Margaret Bradford had not lied to her, if the stagecoach driver had not abandoned her, if Owen had not been on that particular trail at that particular time, she would have lived a completely different life. Maybe she would have found happiness some other way, or maybe she would have returned to Philadelphia defeated and bitter. She would never know, But she knew this. She had found exactly what she was looking for, even though she had not known what that was until she found it. She had sought adventure and independence and purpose, and she had found all of those things. But more importantly, she had found love. Real, deep, enduring love that had carried her through 50 years of joy and hardship, triumph and loss, laughter and tears. She had found home not in a place, but in a person. In Owen Parker, who had seen a stranger dying in the snow and refused to let her go, who had carried her miles through a blizzard, who had nursed her back to health and fallen in love with her, who had married her and built a life with her and loved her faithfully for 5 decades. This was the story she would leave behind when she was gone, the legacy she and Owen had created together. Not wealth or fame or social position, but love. A family built on love, spreading out through generations, touching dozens of lives, all because one cowboy stopped to help a stranger and refused to give up on her even when death seemed certain. Sienna finally let her eyes close, secure in Owen's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was simple and true. She was the luckiest woman in the world. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect spring day that made everything feel possible. Sienna woke to find Owen already up, making coffee in the kitchen. She joined him, accepting a cup gratefully, and they sat together on their porch watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold and pink. "Beautiful day," Owen observed. "Every day with you is beautiful," Sienna replied, making him laugh. "After 50 years, you still know how to charm me." "After 50 years, I still mean it." They spent the day working in the garden Sienna had cultivated over the decades, planting vegetables and flowers, their hands in the rich earth. It was peaceful work, satisfying in its simplicity. They talked about nothing important and everything important, the easy conversation of 2 people who knew each other completely. That evening, Grace came for dinner with her husband and their 3 children. The house filled with noise and laughter once again, grandchildren telling stories and asking for cookies, Grace catching them up on the news from town. It was an ordinary evening, unremarkable in any particular way, but to Sienna it was precious beyond measure. These were the moments that made up a life, the small, ordinary joys that added up to something extraordinary. After Grace left and they were alone again, Owen pulled Sienna into his arms in the middle of the living room and began to dance with her, humming a waltz they had danced to at a town celebration decades ago. "What are you doing?" Sienna asked, laughing. "Dancing with my wife. Is that not allowed?" "Of course it is. You just surprised me." They swayed together in the lamplight, moving to music only they could hear. 2 old people dancing in an empty room. But in that moment, Sienna could see them as they had been, young and newly in love, dancing at their wedding reception while the whole town watched. The years fell away, and they were those people again, full of hope and dreams and infinite possibility. "I love you," Owen whispered into her hair. "Today, tomorrow, and forever." "Forever," Sienna agreed, holding him tight. "That sounds exactly right." And in their little ranch house in Colorado, surrounded by the life they had built from nothing but determination and love, Owen and Sienna Parker danced into their future, whatever it might hold. They had faced blizzards and hardship, loss and disappointment, the endless challenges of building a life on the frontier, but they had faced it all together, and that had made all the difference. Their story had begun with a woman collapsed from cold on the trail to a ranch, and a cowboy who found her and carried her miles through the snow. It had continued through 50 years of marriage, 4 children, a dozen grandchildren, countless challenges overcome and joys celebrated, and it would end someday the way all stories end. But not today. Today they were still here, still together, still in love. Today was just another chapter in their ongoing adventure, and it was perfect.